This footage shows the last moments of 21-year-old Libby Squire before she was violated and killed by a predator who saw her walking alone in the street. Libby was drunk and vulnerable after a night out with friends. She thought the predator was going to help her, but she would end up dead in a river.
After 7 weeks, Libby's family were told yesterday that a body had been found in the Humber estuary. Tonight, they got the news they'd been dreading, as police confirmed it was Libby's body. A post-mortem examination that began this afternoon continues tonight as police try to establish what caused Libby's death. They say this is a hugely distressing time for her family and a very difficult time for all those who've been involved in the investigation.
But how did Libby end up in this situation? Who was the predator who killed her? And what could have been done to prevent this tragedy? Let's explore in this video. Liberty Anna Squire, properly known as Libby, was the eldest of 4 children of Lisa and Russell Squire. She grew up in Buckinghamshire, England, and was described as fun, talented, and down to earth. She made friends easily and always made an effort to include everyone. She was especially close with her mom, who had nicknamed her Pie because of her sweet, outgoing personality. Libby was also hardworking and extremely intelligent, but sometimes she would push herself so much that her mental health began to suffer. She found herself battling an eating disorder and her grades started to slip. But she managed to graduate from high school and then took a gap year to travel and relax. When she got back, she joined the University of Hull to study philosophy. In 2019, Libby was 21 years old and in her second year at the university. She was doing pretty well in her studies while also enjoying the social aspect of being in the university. She had a great group of friends and would occasionally go out drinking and partying around the city. And that's exactly what they did on the evening of January 31st, 2019. The evening started with a group of friends having drinks and playing games in their students' accommodation. They drank until around 10:30 p.m. and then they decided to head out to a local nightclub called The Welly. They arrived at the club around 11:20 p.m., but Libby was turned away because she was too drunk. Her friends had to make a choice: either go back and call it a night, or continue partying without her. They chose the latter, but had to make sure that she got home safely before they continued their evening. At around 11:26 p.m., the friends can be seen in this CCTV footage, putting her in a cab before paying the driver to take her home. They watched as the cab drove away with their friend, never imagining that it would be the last time they would ever see her alive again. Hours had gone by since anyone had heard from Libby. The friends were now back on campus and were winding down for the night. Just before 3 a.m., one of Libby's friends sent a text to her roommate who had stayed in to check how Libby was doing. She was shocked to learn that Libby never came home, and no one had seen or heard from her since earlier that night. The friend and the roommate were concerned that something had happened to her, but since she had left her phone at home, there was no way of reaching her. They called other people on campus to see if they'd seen her, but no one had. The friends' concern turned into fear when they found Libby's keys in the garden. What if she was hurt or something? Libby was not only super drunk, but it was really cold outside, and the snow was beginning to cover the roads. They knew it wasn't safe for her to be out there, so at 2:21 a.m., they called the police and reported her missing. They also called Libby's parents and informed them of what had happened. With Libby's history of mental health issues, her friends and family wondered if this was a cry for help. But they quickly dismissed this theory because she had been in such a good place lately and seemed to really enjoy her time on campus. She had also received good grades in her exams over Christmas. The search for Libby began almost immediately, with over 70 police officers being assigned to the case. They went door to door making inquiries and searched nearby drains, bins, and wooded areas for any sign of the missing students. Libby's classmates also joined in on the search, with the locals being asked to check their sheds and properties in case she's gone there looking for shelter.
Since Libby Squire was last seen, and forensic officers from Humberside Police have spent today at the place where she was last spotted. They collected items of interest as their investigation into the missing 21-year-old student continues. Police say they're extremely concerned for her welfare. Specialist teams aided by Coast Guards are continuing their search efforts along the nearby River Hull. Students have also helped in the ongoing operation.
She's a lovely person and it's so out of character for something like this to happen. Please come home, we know, we love you, all the support, there's over 200 people in there for you, please come home soon.
Obviously, when people go out and they drink, sometimes you lose your phone or you can't get home quite as easy, but she's always made sure that she's found a phone or anyone she can contact to make sure someone knows she's safe, regardless of what happened. So to not hear anything from her at all is completely not like her.
The police were able to track down the cab driver who had picked up Libby that night. He insisted that he dropped her off at home just as instructed and saw her walking toward her front door. Fortunately for the driver, CCTV footage in the area corroborated his story. It showed Libby being dropped outside her home on Wesley Avenue at 11:30 p.m. But for some reason, Libby didn't enter her house. Surveillance cameras in the area captured her walking alone on the side of the road at 11:37 p.m., and she appeared really drunk. At 11:39 p.m., she appeared to have dropped something, and while trying to get it, she fell over in the snow. Two passerbys stopped to help her get there when they saw her lying in the snow. They said she was crying, agitated, and incoherent. When they tried to help her, she was aggressive and snapped at them to leave her alone, and they eventually gave up. A group of students then saw her and tried to get her inside their house to check if she was okay, but she ignored them and continued walking aimlessly down the road. Authorities said that given how cold it was that early morning, Libby might have been showing early signs of hypothermia. At this point, things were not looking good, but police said they were still treating it as a missing persons case. They urged anyone with information to please come forward.
If anyone was driving around the area between 11 p.m. on Thursday evening and 3 a.m. on Friday morning and has dash cam footage, we would urge them to come forward.
Libby's parents, who were now getting desperate, began making appeals to the public to please help find her.
Libby, my darling pie, we just want to know that you're safe. Please get in touch with us any way you can. The whole family is missing you, especially me and your dad, sisters and your brother. I miss you so much. It's breaking my heart not knowing where you are.
Please come forward with any information you may have, no matter how small or irrelevant it may be. We just want Libby home.
As the days went by without any signs of Libby, more police officers and specialists were brought in to help. They began searching nearby water bodies, including the River Hull, for any sign of Libby.
It's day 4 of the search, and now experts are looking for clues in the water. This river is a few meters from where missing student Libby Squire went missing on Thursday night. On the road where Libby lives, the search effort is just as thorough. Police officers hoping to find even the smallest clue to piece together her last known movements.
We did discover her mobile phone, which despite analysis has not provided any further insight as to where she may be or her movements that night. Whilst her location is not yet known, this does not mean she has come to harm, but we must carry out a thorough investigation and explore all possibilities.
Eventually, the police would receive their first real break in the case. Police received a tip from someone who said that they'd heard a woman screaming around Oaks Road playing fields at around 12:15 a.m. the night Libby disappeared. The screams were coming from a nearby wooded area and were so loud that they woke him up. He looked out his window and he saw a man hurrying towards the car. With this new information, police checked the cameras around the area, and what they saw was enough to upgrade the case from a missing person to an abduction. On the footage, they noticed that a silver Vauxhall Astra car had been driving around the area for hours before Libby was last seen. At around 11:55 p.m., the car pulled up at the end of the road near where Libby was walking. Then someone came out and started walking toward Libby, as if following. But then they crossed the road and walked on the other side, but in the same direction. It was as if the person was trying to gauge the situation and see if Libby was really alone. When they confirmed that she was, they crossed back over the road and started talking to her. It's not clear what they talked about, but they're seen 5 minutes later walking together in the opposite direction from the one that Libby had been heading in. A few minutes later, Libby is seen standing on the pavement while the driver is sat in the car. You can see a few lights flashing as cars pass by. Police believe that whoever the driver was waiting for the coast to be clear before proceeding with his plans. At around 12:08 a.m., Libby is seen getting inside this person's car, and they drive off. Libby's watch was later found in the same area. Something had happened to make it come off, and police theorized that the driver had probably grabbed her arm to pull her in. The car was seen again parked around Oak Road playing fields. It was there for about 10 minutes, which was around the time that witnesses said that they heard screams. The car lights then came on and was seen leaving the area, heading back to the streets. Two women then came forward with some pretty helpful information. They reported that around 3 a.m., a man had stepped in front of them in the streets and started pleasuring himself. The women were obviously horrified, but the perv didn't seem to care. In fact, he actually seemed to enjoy the reaction that he was getting. The police used this timeline and the description to track down the man in question. And as you must have already guessed, he was the same guy seen following Libby and driving off with her. On February 6th, police announced that they had arrested 24-year-old Powell Relowitz in connection with Libby's disappearance. Powell was originally from Poland, but he moved to the UK in 2015. He soon met his wife through a dating site, got married, and had 2 children. Neighbors described him as a hard-working family man who worked as a butcher and enjoyed going to the gym and long walks with his young family. He was always friendly, polite, and smiling. Nothing seemed off about him. That is, until 2017, when he began committing some rather disgusting offenses around Hull. In July 2017, a woman sharing an intimate moment with her boyfriend spotted Powell spying on them through her ground floor bedroom window. Then, in December of that year, he broke into a house and stole 2 pleasure devices. He also stole cash, clothes, and pleasure devices in separate robberies. In January 2019, less than 3 weeks before Libby's disappearance, he pleasured himself in front of groups of women on 2 separate occasions. In one of these incidents, he followed the women home and climaxed at their front door. How disgusting. But although he was leaving his DNA everywhere, he could not be identified since he had no criminal record. While in the police car during his arrest, Powell started to laugh, apparently completely unfazed by his charges. Police had found a bag containing intimate toys, women's underwear, and photographs of women, all of which he had stolen in burglaries. His DNA was also found on some of these items. On August 13, 2019, Powell pleaded guilty to 9 offenses, including voyeurism, outraging public decency, and burglary. He denied being involved in Libby's disappearance, saying that he had never seen her in his life. However, when the police showed him the CCTV footage, he changed his story, claiming to be a good Samaritan who had picked her up that night to help. He claimed he dropped her off at Oak Field and went home. While this was not the confession that the police were looking for, it was enough to place him at the scene of the crime. But the police needed more evidence. Meanwhile, he was sentenced to 8.5 years for his other offenses. On March 20th, 2019, Libby's case took a tragic turn when a fisherman found her severely decomposed body floating in the water.
After 7 weeks, Libby's family were told yesterday that a body had been found in the Humber estuary. Tonight, they got the news they'd been dreading, as police confirmed it was Libby's body. A post-mortem examination that began this afternoon continues tonight as police try to establish what caused Libby's death. They say this is a hugely distressing time for her family and a very difficult time for all those who've been involved in the investigation.
An autopsy confirmed that Libby had been violated before she was killed. Because of the state that her body was in, it was impossible to determine how she died. The pathologist also could not determine whether she was dead or alive when she was thrown in the river. But with the body found, Powell's charges were racking up to include kidnapping, murder, and rape. The trial began in 2021 and lasted 4.5 weeks. The prosecution said Powell was looking for an opportunity on that night when he came across Libby, drunk and possibly suffering from hypothermia. While the prosecution couldn't establish whether Powell forced Libby into his car or invited her, they were adamant that his intention wasn't good. To the prosecution, Powell intended to commit an offense, and it could have been to any other female, and Libby became the unfortunate victim. She was alone in the wrong place at the wrong time, giving the predator the perfect opportunity to pounce on the prey. The prosecution said that Powell drove Libby to the playing fields on Oak Road to take advantage of her, and even after he got what he wanted, he didn't stop there. He killed her and then tossed her body into the river to wash away the evidence. Powell had scratches on his face, which were evidence that Libby had tried to defend herself. The prosecution also highlighted Powell's history of sexually motivated offenses in the 18 months before the murder, claiming that he was a man with uncontrolled sexual urges. In his defense, Powell insisted that he only stopped to offer help to a visibly intoxicated Libby, and that he drove her to Oak Road playing fields where they hugged, kissed, and hooked up consensually. He claimed that he then left Libby at the field and drove off in search of attractive women. He admitted pleasuring himself in public later that night, but denied he was excited as a result of Libby's murder. During the trial, the defense read some parts of Libby's medical records which showed that she had previously experienced thoughts of ending her life, which included jumping in the river. Almost a week after deliberation, the jury found Powell guilty of all charges against him.
Just in the last few minutes, the jury, which has been deliberating for 5 days now, coming back with guilty verdicts for both counts of murder and rape. But Drelovich and his defence team throughout saying that although he did admit to having sex with the university student, he said that was consensual, but a jury now deciding that in fact it was rape and that he then was guilty of her murder.
He was sentenced to life in prison with a chance of parole after 27 years. While delivering the sentence, the judge described Powell as a very dangerous individual. Your offending escalated. You grew increasingly emboldened. No doubt you were increasingly confident you would not and could not be caught. She described the crimes as perverted campaign of deviant behavior, saying, "There was a significant degree of planning that night as you patrolled the student area looking for a suitable victim." On Powell's decision to put Libby's dead or dying body in the river, the judge said, "I have no doubt your purpose was to conceal her body, and you intended and hoped her body would be washed out to sea and never found."
Firstly, we would like to thank everybody for their love and support over the last 2 years. We've both really appreciated it. Our special thanks go out to the police teams and the other agencies that were involved with Libby's case from the outset through to today. As a family, today's verdict changes nothing for us. There is no closure, we don't get to have Libby back, and our lives don't revert back to normal. However, we are pleased that all the hard work and dedication of the police and legal teams has been recognised. Libby will always be with us, and we are all so proud of our beautiful, caring, wonderful girl. And although she has been physically taken from us, the memories we have and the love we share will never be taken. Thank you.
Powell's wife divorced him after he was convicted, and she moved back to Poland with her children. She maintained that she didn't suspect anything about what Powell was up to, as their relationship was perfect, and he was a good father to the children. She said she was horrified when she found out that the man she'd married was a predator and a killer. After her daughter's murder, Libby's mom, Lisa, began publicly advocating for men convicted of non-contact sexual offenses, such as voyeurism, to be given tougher sentences, as well as therapy. Her campaign claims that this will prevent such offenders from escalating to more serious offenses of rape and murder, as what happened with Powell.
I can't imagine your pain and suffering that you go through. And also, like Marco, with some of your comments, I thought he was being a little bit too kind. There is other treatments that could be available, but I won't mention them in this committee.
Yeah, that's on my mind.
I suppose that's on
your
mind.
That'd be against you.
My tools.
Yeah, there are other treatments that they do in other countries which would stop this.
Yeah.
I don't think there are any treatments available to cure these men, these animals that do this. I'm with you. I think she should be locked up. I think she should be locked up forever. And never let out to prowl the streets again, because that stops it.
Yes.
Once they're in a cage, they can't go on the pavements, in the parks, they can't do it again. That's the solution.
In March 2022, Lisa met the then Prime Minister Boris Johnson, who sympathized with her situation. She talked to him about the seriousness of the issue, saying that her daughter was just one of the many young girls who fall victim to malice predators like Powell. She argued that anyone convicted of murder should automatically get life in prison without parole. To get closure, Lisa reportedly asked to meet Powell in prison in October 2022. A lot of people don't understand this. I don't hate him. I'm not angry with him. I just want information from him. I don't wish to understand why he did what he did. For me, it's very much about finding out how she was in those last 20 minutes of her life. However, Powell later turned down the meeting, saying that he's appealing the case. Lisa was shocked when Powell refused to see her because he had agreed to the meeting and even told her the conditions for them to meet. I was really tearful and it knocked me. I was very, very upset and was really surprised by my reaction because I didn't think I would be like that. He says he's appealing his case, and if he's appealing a case, then you can't speak legally. You can't speak to him, which makes sense, but we don't have any evidence that he's appealing the case at the moment, so he'll have his reasons. What do you think about this case? Let me know your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell button.